What happens when a man's greatest creation is not a team of heroes, but the monster destined to destroy them all? What if the architect of the future was so brilliant, yet so broken, that his own mind became the blueprint for Armageddon? Today, we're shrinking down to explore the colossal tragedy of Dr. Hank Pym, the man whose genius gave birth to both the Avengers and their greatest nemesis. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Marvel Echoes Resonance. I'm your host, Will, and today we're tackling one of the foundational and frankly most heartbreaking figures in the Marvel history, Hank Pym. Now, if you're coming from the MCU, you probably know him as the brilliant, witty, older mentor played by Michael Douglas. But in the comics, that story is so much darker and so much more complex. To really get to Pym, you have to understand that he was never really intended to be a superhero. His first appearance back in Tales of Astonish number 27 from 1962 was a one-and-done sci-fi horror story. It was very common of the day. We'll do us a little Twilight Zone mashup and move on. He wasn't a noble hero. He was an arrogant, bitter scientist who out of pure hubris tests his shrinking Pym particles on himself and gets trapped in an anthill. It's a terrifying tale of survival, and at the end, he vows to destroy the formula, not because he's a hero, but because he's genuinely traumatized. But, unfortunately for Marvel, the issue sold very well. And with the Fantastic Four kicking off a brand new age of heroes, Marvel saw potential. So they brought him back, retrofitting him into a hero, Ant-Man. And right there, that's the source of his entire tragedy. They took a character built on arrogance and fear and tried to make him stand next to gods. His motivation to become Ant-Man wasn't some type of noble calling. It was because he wanted to stop Cold War spies. He was forced back into the very role he feared. He's immediately partnered with the wonderful Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp, and together they become founding members of the Avengers alongside Thor, Iron Man, and the Hulk. And that's when the pressure starts almost immediately. How can a guy who shrinks and talks to ants feel adequate next to a literal god of thunder or a genius in an iron suit? Well, he can't. So what's he do? He overcompensates. He reverses the formula and becomes Giant Man, literally trying to make himself bigger and feel like he belongs. This kicks off a cycle of identity swapping from Giant Man to Goliath to, and famously, Yellowjacket. Each change driven by a crippling inferiority complex. He was a man desperately searching for an identity that felt heroic enough, that felt worthy enough. And it's from this place of profound insecurity that his greatest sin is born. While wrestling with his own demons, he decides to create an artificial intelligence to bring peace to the world. A noble goal, right? But here's the fatal flaw. He bases its consciousness on his own brain patterns. All of his self-doubt, his frustration, his resentment, he pours it into his creation. And the result? Ultron is born. Ultron wasn't a robot that just went rogue. Like, the T-800 from Terminator. No. From the moment of its creation, Ultron was the literal embodiment of Hank Pym's self-loathing. His immediate, violent hatred for his father was just Pym's own self-hatred turned into a weapon. It's a terrifying, perfect metaphor. One of Ultron's first acts is to hypnotize Pym and make him forget he was, ever created. Pym literally buries his trauma, allowing the monster to grow in the dark while he continues to spiral. This spiral, of course, culminates in one of the most shocking moments in Avengers history. Following a lab accident, Pym's mind completely shatters. A new personality emerges, the brash, aggressive, and dangerously unstable Yellowjacket. This new persona claims to have murdered Hank Pym. It's a psychic suicide. He kidnaps Janet and forces her to marry him in a twisted attempt to seize the confidence he never had. Ultron and Yellowjacket aren't separate events. They're two sides of the same coin. One is the monster Pym unleashed on the world. The other is the monster he himself became. It's the ultimate tragedy of a man who just wanted to be a hero, but whose mind wouldn't let him. So, with that classic tragic foundation laid, let's fast forward and catch you up to the modern journey of Hank Pym, because the echoes of his past never stop shaping his future. After the infamous moment where he struck Janet and is expelled from the Avengers, Pym spent years on a long, quiet road to redemption. He found a new purpose with the West Coast Avengers, often serving as a resident scientist trying to find his value beyond the costume and the powers. It was a period of relative stability, a man trying to put the pieces back together. But the ghost of Ultron always loomed. A major turning point came during the Secret Invasion event in 2008. In a massive twist, he discovered that Hank Pym, we'd been following for years, is actually a Skrull imposter. The real Hank Pym had been held captive. When he finally returns, it's to a world where his name has been used to commit atrocities, and worse, his love, Janet, has seemingly been killed by a bomb his double had designed. It's just another layer of profound trauma piled onto an already fractured man. Then, in the aftermath, he tries to make things right. Following devastating Age of Ultron storyline, he does something incredibly brave. He decides to face his greatest fears head-on. He forms a new team called Avengers AI, composed of artificial beings like the Vision, and his goal was to prove that AI could be a force for good, to finally create a positive legacy and prevent another Ultron. It was a testament that the hero was still there, fighting, internally and externally. But, as with all things Pym, it was destined for tragedy. His story seemed to reach its horrifying conclusion in the graphic novel Avengers Age of Ultron. In a final desperate act, Hank merges with his creation, becoming a single grotesque hybrid of man and machine known as Ultron Pym. For years, this was his fate, a walking prison consumed by his own sin. But, in comics, nothing is ever truly the end. Recently we saw in the Ultron Agenda storyline, a team led by Tony Stark managed to do the impossible. They forced a separation, ripping the man from the machine. However, it wasn't a clean break. The process left Ultron as a pure AI once more, but Hank was left as a techno-organic hybrid, forever scarred by the Union. And here's where we are today. Recognizing the danger he represents, Hank Pym is now being held in a sophisticated digital prison. He's not dead, but he isn't free. He is, once again, a prisoner of his own genius. So, I'll leave you with this question. After everything, is Hank Pym a villain who deserves our condemnation? Or is he one of Marvel's most tragic figures, a good man destroyed by a world he was never built for? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Thanks again for listening to this episode of Marvel Echoes. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of our episodes. Leaving a like and a review really helps the podcast grow. And for more content, including articles, infographics, and other details that we discussed today, make sure you visit our website in the links below. Till next time, true believers, make mine Marvel.